One of the most influential musicians of all time passed away this past week. He was a movement that reminded an entire generation what soul music sounded like. This NBA season is shaping up to be one of the greatest of all time. Either legends will take the opportunity to cement their legacies, or the rising stars will continue to take over the league. These athletes are not just performers, they are so much more in the world today. Welcome back to Behold Pop Culture, the show where we take a look at all the biggest moments that have taken place over this past week. This time around, condolences and rest in pieces are in effect because one of the most influential musicians of all time passed away this past week, as neo-soul R&B artist D'Angelo transitioned at the age of 51. D'Angelo wasn't just an artist. He was a movement that reminded an entire generation what soul music sounded like, and he did it at the cost of his own mental health and eventually his career in the mainstream. Back in the mid-90s, R&B was at the forefront of music, dominated by radio love songs and polished images for the artists that were presented by the record labels. But little did they know that there was a 21-year-old kid from Richmond, Virginia, that grew up playing music for the church and arrived with his first album, Brown Sugar. In 1995, it completely shifted the conversation. It was a gospel-rooted, Prince-inflected, Marvin Gaye-channeled sound, but made clearly still with some hip-hop influences. And with that taking place during what's widely regarded as the golden era of hip-hop, it caught fire like a match. It was live instrumentation, vulnerability, and gave birth to what eventually would be called a neo-soul sound. You might have heard some of his peers that also contributed to this movement: Erykah Badu, Lauryn Hill, The Roots. And the best way I can describe it is a sound that fuses R&B, funk, jazz, and a hip-hop spirit into a sound that feels like it came straight from the earth, as it became a cultural home for artistry that didn't fit the mold of what record labels were pushing at the time. Record labels eventually caught on and started pushing that sound, and now, with money in your pocket to go as far as you want in terms of pushing that sound, then came the album that would end up defining D'Angelo's career. An album by the name of Voodoo. Recorded live with famous Roots drummer Questlove and several phenomenal contributors behind the scenes, it became a perfectly imperfect album. And that's most clearly represented by the fact that the biggest song on the album is called Untitled. All D'Angelo cared about was the quality of the music and expressing himself. On these songs, the drum would sit behind the beat, the bass had room to breathe, and every music rule that he broke was deliberate, allowing D'Angelo to make a more radically intimate feel. But as I emphasize the words raw, vulnerable, truth, deliberate, these themes were responsible for the rapid rise and eventually rapid fall of D'Angelo. Because when you give that much of yourself up publicly within your music, you then allow the world to start to define who you are. People can interpret, review, do what I'm doing now, tell a story for you. And if it doesn't align with what you believe about yourself, an internal conflict can start to brew. And that's exactly what happened for D'Angelo. With Voodoo being backed by a record label, they were able to dictate what image he had to push to the masses. And that became a shirtless, sensual, soft-spoken man aimed at redefining masculinity within R&B. While that seemed like he was turning his vulnerability into power, the attention and objectification that followed caused him to completely withdraw from music. After Voodoo, he disappeared for 15 years, with fans begging for someone who seemed to capture a greatness close to what people view from Prince to come back and deliver more greatness. So even though during this time he had his own battles with addiction, loss, and disillusionment, He would return 15 years later with the album Black Messiah, a political, spiritual, and emotional comeback that was inspired by his personal search for truth in the world amidst politically tumultuous times. It was once again a well-received album that inspired many people in the music scene. But that's not the lesson in this. The lesson is the fact that he turned down all the fame and riches and superstardom that he was on track for because he lost the source of his music. That is an extremely difficult road to travel down for any form of artistry, whether that be music, film, painting. His commitment to only producing art when he had an actual experience and spiritual reflection to pull from became a North Star for the artist to follow. As you can see the generation that was influenced by him. Frank Ocean creating one of the greatest R&B albums of all time with Blonde and being relatively quiet afterwards. SZA has become one of the biggest artists in the R&B world and has only 2 major projects. But those 2 feel so raw, so inspired, that she doesn't need to be the best singer in the world. She doesn't need to have the best production in the world. But the actual lyrics that she writes echoes a cloth of writing like a hip-hop artist, wanting to pull every intricate lyric that you can possibly create. D'Angelo helped usher in a space for artists to be unafraid, to be experimental, emotionally raw, and unintentionally timeless. The plight of juggling art versus fame is one that only a chosen few will face in their lifetime. But to me, art is as great as the people that it inspires. The reason an album is amazing is because of the impact it has on people. The reason a painting is worth millions of dollars is because there's millions of people or people with millions of dollars who appreciate it. So when I look at D'Angelo and appreciate how he influenced modern production and the way that people approach music today, I take it as a moment for you to consider, why are your favorite artists your favorite? Is it because you just hear their songs all the time? Is it because they had a song or an album that resonated deeply with you at a moment in time? Every time you create art, you're giving a piece of yourself away, whether that's to 1 listener or 1 billion. So when I say I enjoy an album, I might have an appreciation for the effort that I believe was put into an album. I might resonate personally with experiences that are being described. There's a litany of possible options for why you might resonate with someone's art. But when you understand how much some of these artists give up to create these universal experiences that can transcend pop culture, the least we can do is express respect and gratitude for the work that they do. So like millions of other people, I say rest in peace to D'Angelo as he transitions onward, and appreciate him for what his art contributed to the world. Appreciation isn't just exclusively for artists, because as the NBA season is returning, we're closing in on the final chapter for a generation of basketball players. LeBron James, Steph Curry, Chris Paul, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook. These are the last of a retiring breed of basketball players who were drafted before 2010. Most of the ones that are still around are lucky to be a role player on a championship team. Somehow LeBron is the oldest player in the NBA and has still maintained top 10 player status. Durant and Steph Curry are approaching that mark soon in their late 30s and also have maintained being a top 10 player in the league. But this season, as we tip off this week, it feels like this might be their last chance at winning a championship. For LeBron, the Lakers went and got Luka Doncic not for him, but for what's going to happen for that team afterwards. So if he still has juice left in the tank, this is the year to give it his all. For Kevin Durant, he joined the Houston Rockets, a young up-and-coming team who gave up some of their young talent to get that veteran presence to hopefully get them over the edge. For Curry and Chris Paul, both of their respective teams, the Golden State Warriors and Los Angeles Clippers, have also been trying to acquire as much veteran talent to give these players their last chance at winning a championship. But the defending champs still loom in the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they are still the favorites to win another championship, potentially going back-to-back. This season is shaping up to be a crossroads. Either legends will take the opportunity to cement their legacies, or the rising stars will continue to take over the league as the NBA opens a new chapter in its book for the superstars that are only in their mid-20s. So here's a couple key storylines that you might want to keep an eye out for as the 82-game season progresses. The biggest of which is, can the Oklahoma City Thunder do it again? The NBA hasn't seen back-to-back champions since the Warriors dynasty. Every year, we've had a new champion emerge, but the Thunder were the youngest team in the NBA, and in theory, every single player should still be getting better. So if they're already ahead of everyone, as long as they stay healthy, they have a good chance to become the next back-to-back champions and potentially set the foundation for a dynasty. Opponents will be gunning for their head. They'll try to copy the blueprint, exploit any weaknesses that they've identified over the offseason. As you might have seen in the business world, as soon as a new top dog emerges, all eyes are on them. Everyone wants to understand how did they get successful, and they want to copy it. We've seen this happen with social media apps. Once one app creates a good feature, every app gets that feature. In music, once one sound gets popular, you hear a lot of popular artists copying that sound. Heavy is the head that wears the crown, and as MVP Shai Gilgeous-Alexander leads this team heading into this season, we'll find out if they're worthy of being crowned the best team in the NBA. The next big storyline is the youth movement, like I mentioned. The last time the NBA was on NBC was in 2002. But this year, Peacock was able to secure the rights back to the NBA. And what that means is there's going to be a new feel, a new sound to these NBA games that we haven't heard in over 20 years. With this new sound, new feel, new commentators entering the game, there's an opportunity to define who will be the new stars, the new faces of the league. The last time NBC was around, the faces were Michael Jordan, Shaq, Kobe. But now we have to lean more into social media. So Luka Doncic, Anthony Edwards, Victor Wembanyama, these young stars who are rising will continue to expand the global appeal for the game of basketball. And even within the league, team building, will more teams give opportunities to younger players over the veterans as they usher in this new era? You might have seen yourself in the work that you do that businesses across not just the NBA, but across the world are starting to focus more on Gen Z. That's the hot new word that people want to use for the most valuable customers that you can acquire. In sports, it's no different. These leagues are starting to look at the young players as the ones who will hold the torch to move the culture forward. So don't be surprised this year if coaches lean further in to letting the young players show what they've got. And lastly, the question I want to pose is, with the changing landscape for the game of basketball, how will discourse around the NBA evolve? In the 80s and 90s, the questions were, is Michael Jordan the greatest player we've ever seen? Who is the most physical player in the NBA, as we saw forces like Shaq, Dennis Rodman, David Robinson? Today, with the fast-paced game, the discourse was clear for the 2010s. It was the evolution of the three ball. Steph Curry came on the scene, 2013, 2014, was emerging, but once he hit that MVP season that led into his first championship, the entire game changed. We started to see 7-foot big men shooting threes like Steph Curry. So it was clear to me that the discourse was, did Steph Curry ruin basketball for those more physical basketball fans who were perplexed by the fact that they were seeing these guys that are supposed to be dominating you in the paint were playing a lighter, quicker, more agile game. But right now, for the 2020s, we already had the start of it disrupted by COVID. Then we've had so many different champions, now 5 different champions in the decade so far. There is no team or player who's leading the discourse other than the people questioning what the future of longevity in basketball looks like when they see how long LeBron James has been able to play. For my prediction, I think that basketball fans got a little bit spoiled with the prior decade being dominated by LeBron and Curry. Because what we saw was what it looks like when you have a literal all-time great carrying their team night after night. We have great players today, like I've mentioned, Luka, Giannis, Jokic, Wemby, Anthony Edwards. But what we're seeing in this decade so far is the way to win is through your role players. Yes, you need the superstar at the fundamental foundation of your team. But if you don't have 6, 7, 8 difference makers, even if they're difference makers just because they make every open three or grab every rebound, good luck competing for a championship. That's why we've seen with the New York Knicks, their superstar Jalen Brunson took a pay cut in order to allow the team to maneuver and build around him. I think he won't be alone in making a decision like that. This is the time for you to explore taking a little bit less money, a la Tom Brady in football, to get these star role players to come in and really win as a team. So I think the discourse that we saw before of Curry carrying his team, LeBron carrying his team, and we've seen glimpses of it with people saying that Giannis or Nikola Jokic carried their teams. I think that we're going to see a lot less debates revolving around that. In my opinion, the debates are going to shift more to how good is this team on a whole? What is their coaching scheme like? How hard do their players play defense? So be on the lookout to see if the conversations around basketball continue to evolve this season. This NBA season is shaping up to be one of the greatest of all time. One of the ways that you usher in a new era of discourse is by being more transparent in your field. In an industry, competitors can open up more to what their brands mean, to bring in more customers who want to support what they believe in. For music, it can be the D'Angelo where you're just revealing more of your personal story. But for sports, one of the main ways that we get that is through documentaries. And the NBA might agree with what I believe because the new season of the documentary Starting Five has revealed even more of what it's like being one of the best players in the NBA. Starting Five is the best NBA documentary of this year. When a show goes behind the scenes, you might expect some locker room footage, some new angles on highlight plays, and direct promotions by the athletes. But for the second season of Starting Five, they hit a home run because they were able to secure both superstars for the NBA Finals teams and a few aging players at different moments in their career. They were able to secure Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the superstar face of the champion Oklahoma City Thunder, Tyrese Halliburton, the face of the Indiana Pacers who faced off against the Thunder in the NBA Finals, Kevin Durant, NBA legend, some people believe the greatest scorer in NBA history on a Phoenix Suns team that underperformed, James Harden, Fear the Beard, one of the most iconic players in NBA history because of the flair, the style to his game, as he would dance, cook like a chef, and innovated on the step back move in basketball. And lastly, Jaylen Brown, who was the returning finals MVP for the Boston Celtics that won the NBA championship the prior year. With this great mix of players that are being transparent, we get an insider look into the culture of transitions in your NBA career, the weight that comes with an established legacy, and the shifting of the guard for who's considered the greatest. Durant and Harden represent the tier of players whose legacies have mostly already been defined. Durant just continues to seek the highest form of basketball that he can be a part of, and James Harden is looking for the cherry on top of winning his first NBA championship. But with all the stats and influence already written in the history books, every year it's a new challenge to ask yourself, how do I stay motivated and how do I still stay relevant? For Shai, Tyrese, and Jalen, they represent the future of the NBA, the next wave of stars who are hoping to carry the league forward. These guys grew up studying Durant, Harden, and their peers, and are now defining what they want their legacy to be in the league. So the show captures the tension, the torch being passed, the old guard making sure they close off their chapters on good notes, and the new guard learning what it's like to shoulder these expectations. Like season 1, we get to see their families, quiet moments of struggle, and pressures that don't show up when you just look at the box scores. When you're thinking, man, Durant hasn't been looking good these last couple of games, he's thinking it too. But we get to see how he actually deals with those challenges, especially today when athlete culture is about so much more than just what you do on the basketball court. It's as much about identity, brand, and authenticity as it is about how you perform on the court. That's why we can get some players who might not perform as well but are held in high regard, and vice versa for players who are not. With them being more vulnerable, their stories can map onto broader human themes that we'll all experience: adaptation, relevance, and the eternal search for purpose in life. So if you're younger, you can relate to what it's like trying to figure out what greatness looks like for you. Is it how you show up every day to work, committed to doing your best? Is it how you treat other people? Is it what you give to the world with your art and perspective? For people later in life, how do you want your legacy to end? How do you want to pass on information to those coming behind you? Or how to stay relevant with AI seemingly threatening millions of people's jobs? Getting to see how these basketball superstars face these challenges might spark something for an experience that you're personally going through. As basketball fans, this series is one of many things that are erasing the barrier between fan and athlete. We no longer just spectate their highlight reels. We get context, vulnerability, and narrative arcs. How I view Shea might have previously just been through watching him play games, but now seeing how he treats his teammates behind the scenes, how he treats his family, can elevate my respect for him. And when he loses, I might not be as quick to jump to the conclusion of disparaging his performances. Similarly, if you've fallen on the wrong end of one of Kevin Durant's tweets, you might completely despise him because of what he said to you personally, with the level of access that every other generation did not have. Today, you can respond to one of Kevin Durant's tweets, and within seconds, he can call you out. These sports stars are becoming pop culture characters for global experiences. So I see this show as a cultural timestamp, showing the same vulnerability that we saw last week Saquon Barkley had to do his own documentary to reveal. These athletes are not just performers. They are so much more in the world today. So from the pop culture lens, I see the world of professional sports in the same storytelling ecosystem as music, film, and gaming, with behind-the-scenes access allowing us to better understand what it's like to chase greatness. So as you watch this show, you can reflect on what legacy you're building and what story you're telling beyond the numbers that you might be producing for your job or the quantity that you might be producing for your art. It's difficult to continue achieving greatness over the span of several years, let alone decades. But for one franchise, they continue to find ways to do it again and again and again. And that's Pokemon. As the new game, Pokemon Legends ZA, was released. It's another game that's aiming to be at the center of nostalgia, evolution, and fun. Pokemon used to be a more isolated experience. They have a singular game that you could play by yourself on a Game Boy or one of the earlier consoles that existed. Today, they understand how the world works. Everything's about social media, sharing experiences, and Pokemon has leaned into that with the way that they develop their games. This game is set in one city where people can come and interact and visit and battle each other in real time. The narrative roots are still there, Pokemon and humans battling side by side to defeat evil forces. You want to level up and eventually catch them all, hopefully with the goal of eventually battling your friends or other people across the world. This is an example to show that even legacy brands have to learn how to adapt and change based on the way the world shifts. The Pokemon brand has evolved from just let's play and enjoy time on our own to a lifestyle brand of living, sharing, and competing with other people, with no greater example of that than Pokemon Go, when that became one of the biggest games in the world. The Pokemon game series has had its ups and downs, aiming to capture that level of greatness, and so far the response has been mixed. Naturally, when you experiment with something new, not everyone is going to be on the same page on it being great. But I respect their desire to course correct and continue to find ways to give you something fresh. It at least sends a cultural signal that we're still worth your time, effort, and energy. So don't be surprised if you see people on your daily commutes playing this new Pokemon game, because even if it gets the most mixed reviews that it possibly can, the core fan base is so passionate and so enormous that they will show up and support regardless. And with that being said, we come to the end of this week's podcast. I appreciate you taking the time to listen and get caught up on all these major moments that took place across pop culture over this past week. If you want a more extensive view on the events that have taken place, you can sign up for my newsletter through the link in the description for the weekly Behold Pop Culture newsletter experience, where I'll be more extensive with the little blurbs of events that have taken place. Otherwise, I hope you have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time. This is Behold Pop Culture.